Howdy again everyone, and today I'm testing a lens I've been itching to get my hands on ever since it was announced, the new Canon RF 135mm f1.8 L IS USM. It's another of Canon's absolutely top tier L lenses, and as such it costs an eye-watering $2,100 or an even more expensive £2,500 here in the UK. It's only for Canon's new EOS R mirrorless digital cameras, full frame or aps-c. I'd like to thank Canon UK very much for loaning me a copy of this lens for a week for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review. 135mm is one of those focal lengths I've fallen in love with over the years. It is perfect for classic portrait photography, giving you a powerfully autofocus background that's quite compressed but not too much so. It's also very useful for subject photography, event and wedding photography, even a touch of landscape work, and the maximum aperture of f1.8 in this lens can really bring your medium telephoto images to life. While it's actually nothing new to have a 135mm lens with such a bright aperture as f1.8, this is the first one in the world to also feature image stabilization, giving you a nicely stabilized image no matter what Canon EOS R camera you're working on. Here's some footage with the stabilization turned off, and now turned on. Okay, the stabilization isn't rock steady here, but it is doing a pretty fine job, especially considering the larger glass elements it's trying to stabilize within. It also works perfectly quietly. Let's take a look at build quality now. The lens's impressive capability is matched only by its rather huge size and weight. This thing tips the scales at almost a kilogram or just over 2 pounds, so its place in your kit bag will be very prominent, and it'll balance much better on a larger EOS R camera. Other than that, its build quality is very typical for a modern Canon L lens. Although the lens's body is mostly made of plastic, it actually feels nice and solid, with plenty of weather sealing, including a gasket around the metallic rear mount. On the side we get physical switches for autofocus and stabilization, which is not to be taken for granted these days, as well as a couple of customizable focus hold buttons. Then comes the rubberized manual focus ring. It turns very smoothly and the focus motor responds well to it being turned. As you can see here, this lens is not immune to focus breathing, zooming in rather a lot as you focus more closely. The lens utilizes Canon's incredible Nano USM autofocus system. Despite having large internal glass elements to move around, the autofocus motor works very quickly, accurately and completely silently. Fantastic. It had no problems with tracking or focusing in low light either. At the front we get one of Canon's customizable control rings, which turns with gentle clicks to it. You can send the lens away to Canon to have it declicked if you want for a price, and it can control your aperture, exposure compensation or whatever else you set it to in your camera's menu. The lens's filter thread size is a large 82mm wide, and the lens comes with a generously sized hood. It doesn't come with a carry case. Overall, it's the typically nice build quality of a modern Canon L lens here, and I was particularly impressed that its autofocus works so powerfully and quickly. Okay, let's take a look at image quality now. We'll start by mounting it onto a full frame camera, my 45MP Canon EOS R5. In-camera corrections are turned on. Straight from f1.8, in the middle of the image, we are treated to razor sharpness and excellent contrast, and in the image corners, exactly the same, no deterioration. 10 out of 10 across the entire 45MP full frame image, right away from f1.8, it's not often you see that. Here's f2.8 and f4, naturally there's not really any difference, the lens is still razor sharp. It stays this sharp down to f11, where a touch of softness emerges due to diffraction, and f16 looks softer again. Overall though, a stellar performance on full frame. Okay, let's challenge the lens a little further by mounting it onto my Canon EOS R7 with its smaller and incredibly demanding 32.5MP aps-c sensor. But the lens easily rises to the occasion here. Even from f1.8, we are still seeing razor sharpness in the middle of the image and back in the corners. Stop down to f2.8 to see an absolutely minuscule improvement in those corners that you probably can't even see due to YouTube's compression. The lens stays this sharp down to about f8. Diffraction sets in sooner on a very high resolution aps-c camera, so stopping down to f11 leaves a considerably softer image, and at f16 diffraction takes a major toll. Still, it's exceptionally rare to find a lens as sharp as this on an EOS R7, so even on aps-c, again, it's a perfect performance. Let's turn off in-camera corrections now and take a look at vignetting and distortion on a full-frame camera. The lens projects a mild pincushion distortion. Technically, it's a fault, but it's amazingly common to see on portrait lenses, and it will actually make your subject look a little thinner if you don't correct for it. At f1.8, there's obviously some vignetting here, but it falls very softly across from the corners. Again, some photographers actually like to keep this in your image because it'll draw a little more attention to your subject in the center. Stop down to f2.8 though, and those corners brighten up quickly. This lens can focus as closely as 70 centimeters from your subject, giving you potentially great magnification here, much closer than usual for a portrait lens. At f1.8, close-up image quality is rather soft and hazy, unfortunately. Stop down to f2.8 though, and that great image quality makes a return, and at f4, close-up sharpness is perfect again. Let's see how well the lens works against bright lights now. It's a performance on the good side of average here. There is a fair bit of flaring to be seen at certain points, but it's fairly translucent, and contrast generally remains nice and high. A make or break question for a lens like this is the quality of its bokeh. Occasionally, difficult backgrounds can generate a slight jumbling to the image, and we also get the almost ubiquitous cat's eye shape to bokeh balls in the corners of your images, but on the whole, even quite strong specular highlights look very smooth here, and those backgrounds are generally as gorgeous as they are strongly diffused. They almost look like the lens is using an apodization filter or something. Let's see about longitudinal chromatic aberration now. At f1.8, a little colour fringing on bokeh highlights is visible here, purple in the background and green in the foreground, although I've certainly seen much worse than this before. Stop down to f2.8 and it's totally gone now, which is a saving grace. Overall, well, the Canon RF 135mm f1.8L is simply a stellar optic in just about every way. It's that simple. A sticking point for a lot of people will be its cost. Its asking price of over $2,000 is a bit of pill to swallow, but in a lot of ways it's understandable. The lens's image stabilization adds greatly to its manufacturing cost, surely. Its autofocus and its optics are pretty much the best in the world, and the simple fact is that if you want the absolute best, you have to pay for it. Cheaper options are available out there if you don't quite need this level of quality, and if you're happy to use the EF to RF mount adapter. But at the end of the day, anyone who bites the bullet on this 135mm monster won't be disappointed, as it performs absolutely unquestioningly, and so certainly comes highly recommended. Wow, what a lens! I've tested some stunning 135mm optics in the past. Congratulations to Canon for actually beating the competition here, and thank you for loaning me the lens so I can get even more classy pictures for my wife's Facebook profile. Anyway, thanks for watching, and a huge thanks to all my Patreon supporters for helping me to keep these reviews trucking on. Check out my Patreon page in the description below if you find these reviews helpful, and there you can find all kinds of exclusive bonus content just for supporters. Ciao for now, everyone.